The salty Pacific air whipped across the training grounds as Sarah Martinez adjusted her gear for what felt like the 100th time that morning. At 24, she stood among 47 other candidates at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado, California. The year was 2019, and she was one of only 3 women attempting to break through the most grueling military training program in the world. Her journey to this moment had begun years earlier in a small Texas town, where her father, a retired Marine, had taught her that limits existed only in the mind. Growing up, Sarah had always been different from other girls her age. While they played with dolls, she dismantled old radios and rebuilt bicycle engines. Her hands were always dirty, her knees always scraped, and her determination always unshakable. The morning sun cast long shadows across the obstacle course as Instructor Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez called the candidates to attention. His voice carried the authority of someone who had seen combat in 3 different theaters of war. Rodriguez had broken more hopeful seals than most people had met, and his reputation for being impossibly demanding preceded him like a thunderclap. Sarah had heard the whispers from day one. The other candidates, mostly men in their early 20s, questioned whether she belonged there. Some were subtle about it, offering backhanded encouragement that felt more like condescension. Others were more direct, suggesting she was taking up a spot that could go to someone who actually had a chance of making it through. The truth was, Sarah had already proven herself in ways most of them never would. She had served 2 tours as a combat medic in Afghanistan, where she had earned a Bronze Star for pulling 3 wounded soldiers to safety during a Taliban ambush. She could run a 6-minute mile, bench press 1.5 times her body weight, and had scored perfect marks in every physical fitness test the Navy had thrown at her. But none of that seemed to matter here. Every morning brought new challenges designed to break the weak and forge the strong. The physical demands were brutal, but the mental warfare was even worse. The instructors seemed to take special pleasure in targeting her, questioning every decision, scrutinizing every movement, and pushing her harder than anyone else. During the first week of basic underwater demolition training, Sarah watched as 12 candidates rang the bell and quit. The brass bell sat prominently in the center of the compound, a symbol of surrender that called to every candidate during their darkest moments. 3 simple rings would end the pain, the exhaustion, and the constant pressure, but Sarah had never been one to take the easy way out. The pool competency test nearly broke her. Candidates were required to swim 50 meters underwater, while instructors did everything possible to disorient and panic them. They would rip off masks, tie knots in breathing apparatus, and even flip candidates upside down. Sarah had always been a strong swimmer, but something about being underwater while instructors actively worked against her triggered a claustrophobia she had never experienced before. On her first attempt, she surfaced gasping and panicked halfway through the test. The instructors showed no mercy, immediately sending her to the back of the line to try again. The second attempt was worse. By the 3rd try, Sarah could hear some of the other candidates placing bets on whether she would ring the bell before the day was over. That evening, as she sat in her barracks cleaning her rifle, Sarah reflected on the day's failures. The M4 carbine in her hands was more than just a weapon to her. It was an extension of her will, a tool she had mastered through countless hours of practice. Growing up, her father had taught her that a rifle was only as good as the person holding it, but a person was only as strong as their commitment to excellence. The next morning brought the dreaded log PT, where teams of candidates carried telephone poles weighing over 200 pounds through sand, surf, and obstacle courses. Sarah's team struggled from the beginning. At 5 feet 6 inches and 140 pounds, she was significantly smaller than her teammates, but she refused to be the weak link. When others suggested she move to the back where she could contribute less, she positioned herself at the front and lifted with everything she had. Hour after hour, the teams carried their logs through increasingly difficult challenges. Sarah's shoulders screamed with pain, her legs trembled with exhaustion, and her lungs burned with every breath. But she never let go. When one of her teammates stumbled and fell, she helped him up. When another suggested they take a break, she encouraged the team to push forward. By the end of the exercise, 3 more candidates had quit, but Sarah's team had finished in the top 5. For the first time since arriving at Bud S, she saw something resembling respect in the eyes of her teammates. It wasn't acceptance yet, but it was acknowledgement that she belonged there as much as anyone else. That night, Chief Rodriguez pulled her aside after chow. His weathered face revealed nothing as he spoke in his characteristic monotone. He told her that her performance during Log PT had been noted, but that one good day didn't make a Navy SEAL. He warned her that the real challenges were still ahead, and that many candidates who showed early promise ultimately failed when the pressure reached its peak. Sarah listened respectfully, but inside she felt a fire burning that no amount of cold Pacific water could extinguish. She had not come this far to give up when things got difficult. Every scraped knee from her childhood, every challenging deployment, every moment of doubt had prepared her for this crucible. She would either emerge from this training as a Navy SEAL, or she would leave knowing she had given everything she had. As she cleaned her rifle that night, Sarah made a silent promise to herself and to the weapon in her hands. Together, they would prove that determination, skill, and heart mattered more than size, gender, or the expectations of others. The rifle had never failed her, and she would not fail it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she was ready for whatever came next. The third week of training arrived like a storm front, bringing with it the most feared phase of Buddhist training, Hell Week. Sarah had heard stories about this legendary test of human endurance, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of 5.5 days with only 4 hours of sleep total, constant physical challenges, and psychological pressure designed to break even the strongest candidates. The week began at sunset on Sunday with the sound of machine gun fire, artillery simulators, and instructors screaming orders through bullhorns. Sarah and the remaining 31 candidates were immediately thrown into freezing surf, where they had to lock arms and lie in the sand while waves crashed over them for what felt like hours. The cold Pacific water cut through their uniforms like knives, and Sarah could feel her body temperature dropping dangerously low. But the cold was nothing compared to the doubt that began creeping into her mind. As she lay in the surf, listening to grown men around her crying and begging for the torture to end, Sarah began to question whether she was strong enough to endure what lay ahead. The instructors seemed to sense her moment of weakness, focusing their attention on her with renewed intensity. Chief Rodriguez stood over her as waves crashed around them, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. He told her that she was taking up space that belonged to a real warrior, that she was fooling herself if she thought she could handle what real SEALs faced in combat. His words stung worse than the freezing water, but they also ignited something deep within her that refused to be extinguished. The boat crews were the backbone of Hell Week, teams of 7 candidates who would rise or fall together. Sarah had been assigned to Boat Crew 5, a group that included some of the strongest and most competitive candidates in the class. Initially, her teammates had been skeptical about having a woman in their crew, worried that she would hold them back during the grueling boat races and surf passages that defined this phase of training. Their first major test came during a night surf passage, where crews had to navigate their heavy inflatable boats through massive waves in complete darkness. The Pacific Ocean was particularly violent that night, with waves reaching 8 to 10 feet. Sarah found herself positioned at the bow of the boat, responsible for calling out wave patterns and helping guide the crew through the treacherous waters. As they paddled into the surf zone, a massive wave caught their boat sideways, flipping it completely over and dumping all 7 crew members into the churning water. Sarah found herself pinned underneath the overturned boat, unable to breathe and disoriented by the powerful currents. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her, but her training kicked in. She forced herself to remain calm, found the edge of the boat, and pulled herself to the surface. What happened next surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of focusing on her own safety, Sarah immediately began accounting for her teammates. She spotted one of them, a large candidate named Thompson, struggling in the water about 20 feet away. Without hesitation, she swam to him and helped him reach the overturned boat. Together, they managed to flip it back over and help the rest of their crew climb back in. The rescue had cost them valuable time in the race, dropping them from second place to dead last. Sarah expected her teammates to be furious with her for potentially costing them the victory. Instead, she found something she hadn't experienced since arriving at Bud's genuine acceptance. Thompson, who had been one of her harshest critics, simply nodded and said that she had proven herself a true teammate. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion, pain, and determination. Sarah and her crew carried their boat over endless sand dunes, through obstacle courses, and into the surf countless times. They completed timed runs, calisthenics, and combat scenarios, while instructors screamed criticisms and tried to break their spirits. Several more candidates quit, including 2 from Sarah's original boat crew who were replaced by others who had lost teammates. By Wednesday night, Sarah was operating on willpower alone. Her body had moved beyond pain into a state of functional numbness. Her hands were raw and bleeding from rope burns. Her feet were covered in blisters and her shoulders ached from constantly carrying the boat. But her mind remained sharp, focused on the goal that had brought her here. The weapons familiarization drill came at the worst possible moment, when candidates were at their lowest point physically and mentally. Sarah and the others were required to disassemble, clean and reassemble their rifles while blindfolded and under time pressure. Many of the male candidates, despite their physical advantages, struggled with the fine motor control required for the intricate task. Sarah's rifle came apart in her hands like she was conducting a symphony. Every piece had its place. Every component served a purpose, and she knew them all by touch alone. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, guided by years of experience and countless hours of practice. While other candidates fumbled with springs and firing pins, Sarah's rifle came together smoothly and efficiently. The time limit was 30 seconds. Most candidates needed 45 seconds or more. Sarah completed the task in 18 seconds, even while exhausted and operating on minimal sleep. Chief Rodriguez checked her work twice, clearly surprised by her performance. The rifle was not only assembled correctly, but was cleaner than when she had started. For the first time since Hell Week began, the instructors seemed genuinely impressed. Chief Rodriguez announced that Sarah had achieved the fastest time in the class, and that her rifle maintenance was exemplary. The other candidates, despite their exhaustion, offered grudging respect for her technical skills. It was a small victory, but in the context of Hell Week, small victories felt like major triumphs. Thursday brought the most challenging evolution yet, the around-the-world boat race. Crews had to navigate a course that took them miles down the coastline and back, all while battling fatigue, cold water, and increasingly rough seas. Sarah's crew had developed a rhythm over the past few days, working together like a well-oiled machine despite their exhaustion. As they paddled through the dark waters, Sarah found herself thinking about her father and the lessons he had taught her about perseverance. He had always said that the strongest steel was forged in the hottest fire, and that true character was revealed not in moments of comfort, but in times of greatest challenge. She was living that truth now, discovering reserves of strength she never knew existed. The finish line appeared just as the sun was rising on Friday morning. Sarah's crew crossed in third place, a remarkable achievement considering they had started the week as relative outsiders. As they pulled their boat onto the beach for the final time, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment that transcended physical exhaustion. She had survived Hell Week, but more importantly, she had earned the respect of her teammates and instructors through her actions rather than her words. The weeks following Hell Week brought a different kind of challenge to Sarah and the 23 remaining candidates. The constant physical torture had ended, but now they faced the technical phases of training that would determine whether they had the specialized skills necessary to become Navy SEALs. The attrition rate during this phase was often higher than Hell Week itself, as candidates discovered that raw determination alone wasn't enough to master the complex requirements of special operations. Sarah threw herself into the academic portions of training with the same intensity she had brought to the physical challenges. Combat diving, land warfare, and weapons training required a combination of technical knowledge and practical application that suited her methodical approach to learning. While some of her classmates struggled with the transition from purely physical challenges to cerebral ones, Sarah found herself excelling in ways that surprised even her instructors. The diving phase nearly eliminated her from the program through no fault of her own. During a routine training exercise in the murky waters off Coronado, Sarah was practicing underwater navigation when her breathing apparatus malfunctioned. The regulator began delivering a mixture of air and water with each breath, creating a situation that could quickly become fatal in the underwater environment. Protocol dictated that she surface immediately and signal for help. But surfacing during this particular exercise would result in an automatic failure and likely dismissal from the program. Sarah found herself facing an impossible choice: risk her life to complete the training evolution or prioritize safety and probably lose her chance at becoming a SEAL. In that moment of crisis, her training took over. Rather than panicking or surfacing, Sarah remembered her father's lessons about staying calm under pressure. She switched to her backup breathing system while continuing the navigation exercise, completing the required course while managing a potentially life-threatening equipment failure. When she finally surfaced at the designated point, the instructors were unaware of the drama that had played out 20 feet below the surface. It wasn't until the post-exercise equipment inspection that the malfunction was discovered. Chief Rodriguez examined the faulty regulator with the same intensity he brought to everything else. Clearly impressed that Sarah had managed to complete the exercise despite the equipment failure, he told her that her decision to continue the mission while adapting to changing circumstances demonstrated exactly the kind of problem-solving ability that SEALs needed in combat situations. The land warfare phase brought new challenges and new opportunities for Sarah to distinguish herself. The candidates were divided into smaller units and tasked with planning and executing complex missions that required them to apply everything they had learned about tactics, weapons, and teamwork. Sarah found herself naturally gravitating toward leadership roles, not because she sought them out, but because her teammates began looking to her for guidance during critical moments. Her first major leadership test came during a simulated patrol mission in the desert, training areas east of San Diego. Sarah's 4-person team was tasked with conducting reconnaissance on a mock enemy position and reporting back without being detected. The mission seemed straightforward, but military training scenarios were designed to present unexpected complications that tested decision-making under pressure. 2 hours into the patrol, the team's radio operator reported that their communications equipment had failed, leaving them unable to contact headquarters or call for support if needed. Standard procedure would have been to abort the mission and return to base, but Sarah recognized that real combat situations rarely offered the luxury of perfect equipment or ideal circumstances. She made the decision to continue the mission using hand signals and predetermined contingency plans they had rehearsed during the planning phase. Her team successfully infiltrated the target area, gathered the required intelligence, and extracted without being detected by the opposing force instructors who were actively trying to catch them. When they returned to base and reported their success despite the communications failure, the instructors were forced to acknowledge that Sarah had demonstrated exceptional leadership and tactical thinking. The weapons training phase was where Sarah's natural abilities truly shone. While her physical size had been a disadvantage during some of the earlier challenges, her steady hands and analytical mind gave her significant advantages when it came to marksmanship and weapons handling. The candidates were required to master not just the basic M4 carbine, but also pistols, machine guns, sniper rifles, and various specialized weapons systems used by SEAL teams. Sarah's performance on the shooting range was nothing short of exceptional. During the precision marksmanship test, candidates were required to engage targets at various distances while dealing with wind, elevation changes, and time pressure. Most candidates struggled to achieve the minimum passing scores, but Sarah consistently scored in the top percentiles of the class. Her rifle seemed to become an extension of her body during these exercises. The muscle memory built through years of practice with her father took over, and she found herself making shots that impressed even the veteran instructors. During one particularly challenging exercise, she engaged targets at 400, 600, and 800 meters in rapid succession, scoring hits that would have been impressive for seasoned snipers. Chief Rodriguez observed her performance with growing interest, making notes in his evaluation folder after each shooting exercise. He had seen thousands of candidates come through the program over his career, and while many were strong physically or mentally, few demonstrated the combination of technical skill and intuitive understanding of weapons that Sarah displayed consistently. The close quarters combat training brought different challenges. In the confined spaces of mock buildings and ships, Sarah's smaller stature actually became an advantage. She could move through doorways and around corners more quickly than larger teammates, and her natural agility allowed her to engage targets from positions that others couldn't effectively use. During one memorable exercise, Sarah's team was tasked with clearing a multi-room building occupied by hostile role-players. The scenario was designed to test their ability to work as a coordinated unit while dealing with the chaos and confusion of close-quarters battle. Sarah took point position, leading her team through the structure with a combination of speed and precision that impressed the evaluating instructors. When they encountered a particularly challenging room where multiple armed opponents were positioned behind cover, Sarah made a split-second decision that showcased her tactical thinking. Instead of attempting a direct frontal assault that would likely result in casualties, she directed her team to use diversionary tactics while she flanked the position through an adjacent room. Her approach required precise timing and coordination with her teammates, but the result was a clean sweep of all hostile targets with no simulated friendly casualties. The exercise evaluators later described her tactical leadership as textbook perfect, demonstrating an understanding of small unit tactics that typically took years of experience to develop. As the training weeks progressed, Sarah began to notice a shift in how she was perceived by both instructors and fellow candidates. The initial skepticism about her presence in the program had gradually given way to respect, earned through consistent performance and unwavering dedication. She was no longer seen as a woman trying to prove she belonged with men. She was simply seen as a highly capable candidate who happened to be female. The transformation was particularly evident during team exercises, where her opinions were sought out, and her tactical suggestions were implemented without question. Her boat crew from Hell Week had evolved into a tight-knit unit that functioned with the kind of trust and cooperation that instructors recognized as essential for effective SEAL teams. But even as Sarah's confidence grew and her skills continued to develop, she remained aware that the most challenging phases of training lay ahead. The final exercises would test not just her individual capabilities, but her ability to function effectively as part of the complex special operations machine that defined Navy SEAL teams. The final month of BUD/S training arrived with an unexpected challenge that would test everything Sarah had learned and accomplished over the previous 6 months. A new commanding officer had been assigned to oversee the training program. Captain James Mitchell, whose reputation for being particularly traditional in his views about women in combat roles preceded him like a dark cloud. Captain Mitchell had built his career during an era when special operations were exclusively male domains, and he made no secret of his belief that the inclusion of women in SEAL training was a politically motivated experiment that would ultimately compromise the effectiveness of the teams. His arrival created an atmosphere of uncertainty among the candidates and instructors who had watched Sarah prove herself time and again throughout the program. The captain's first act was to order a comprehensive review of all candidate performance records, paying particular attention to any accommodations or modifications that had been made for female candidates. Sarah knew that no such accommodations had been made for her, as she had consistently met or exceeded the same standards required of her male counterparts. But the review created an air of suspicion that undermined months of earned respect. During his initial address to the candidates, Captain Mitchell made his position clear without directly mentioning Sarah by name. He spoke about maintaining the integrity and traditions of the SEAL teams, emphasizing that there could be no compromise in standards regardless of external pressures or social expectations. His words carried an unmistakable message that he viewed Sarah's presence as a threat to everything the program represented. The impact of this shift in leadership became apparent immediately. Instructors who had previously treated Sarah as just another candidate began second-guessing their evaluations and looking for reasons to find fault with her performance. Exercise scenarios that she completed successfully were subjected to additional scrutiny, and her mistakes were magnified while her successes were minimized or ignored entirely. Sarah found herself in an impossible situation. If she protested the unfair treatment, she risked being labeled as someone who couldn't handle criticism or adversity. If she remained silent, she allowed the negative narrative about her capabilities to take hold without challenge. She chose a middle path, continuing to focus on her performance while documenting the instances where she was held to different standards than her male counterparts. The situation reached a crisis point during the final field training exercise, a complex multi-day scenario designed to test every skill the candidates had developed throughout the program. The exercise involved a simulated hostage rescue mission that required teams to infiltrate enemy territory, conduct reconnaissance, and execute a precision assault on a heavily defended compound. Sarah was assigned to Alpha Team, a 6-person unit led by Candidate Officer Johnson, one of the most respected members of the class. The team was tasked with conducting the initial reconnaissance and establishing overwatch positions for the main assault force. It was a critical mission that would determine the success or failure of the entire exercise. The first 2 days of the exercise went smoothly, with Alpha Team successfully infiltrating the target area and establishing hidden observation posts that provided valuable intelligence about enemy positions and patrol patterns. Sarah's role as the team's designated marksman required her to maintain constant vigilance while providing precise fire support if the team was discovered or needed to engage targets during the assault phase. On the third day, as they prepared for the final assault, disaster struck in the form of a realistic training emergency that pushed the exercise beyond simulation into genuine life or death stakes. During a routine equipment check, Johnson discovered that his primary weapon had suffered a critical malfunction that rendered it completely inoperable. The timing couldn't have been worse, as the assault was scheduled to begin in less than 2 hours. Standard operating procedure called for Johnson to assume a support role using a backup weapon while another team member took over primary assault responsibilities. However, Johnson's ego and his position as team leader made him reluctant to step aside, especially with Captain Mitchell and other senior officers observing the exercise from the command post. Sarah recognized the dangerous situation developing within her team. Johnson's insistence on leading the assault with an unfamiliar backup weapon could compromise the entire mission and potentially result in serious injuries during the live fire portions of the exercise. She made the difficult decision to voice her concerns, knowing that challenging a team leader's decision could have serious consequences. For her standing in the program, her suggestion that Johnson allow her to take point position for the assault was met with immediate resistance, not just from Johnson but from several other team members who viewed it as an inappropriate attempt to usurp leadership during a critical moment. The argument that followed revealed the underlying tensions that had been building since Captain Mitchell's arrival, with team dynamics suddenly fracturing along gender lines that had previously been irrelevant. Chief Rodriguez, who was embedded with Alpha Team as an observer and evaluator, watched the confrontation with growing concern. He had seen promising candidates fail at this final stage due to personality conflicts and poor decision-making under pressure. More importantly, he recognized that Sarah's tactical assessment was correct, and that Johnson's pride was putting the entire team at risk. The chief made the decision to intervene, not by taking sides in the argument, but by presenting both candidates with a challenge that would resolve the leadership question through demonstrated competence rather than debate. He ordered both Johnson and Sarah to engage a series of precision targets at various distances, with the higher scorer earning the right to lead the assault phase. The impromptu marksmanship competition took place under the watchful eyes of Captain Mitchell and several other senior officers who had been drawn to Alpha Team's position by reports of the leadership dispute. The pressure was intense, as both candidates knew that their performance would likely determine not just who led the assault, but potentially who successfully completed the SEAL program. Johnson went first, using his backup weapon to engage targets at 100, 200, and 400 meters. His shooting was competent but not exceptional, hampered by his unfamiliarity with the weapon and the stress of the situation. He managed to hit 7 out of 10 targets, a respectable score but not outstanding given the circumstances. Sarah stepped up to the firing line with her M4 carbine, the same weapon she had maintained and trained with throughout the program. As she settled into position, she felt the familiar comfort of the rifle's weight and balance, the smooth action of the bolt, and the precise alignment of the optics she had zeroed countless times during training. The first target fell with her initial shot, a clean hit at 100 meters that drew approving nods from the observing instructors. The 200-meter targets followed in rapid succession, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision. By the time she engaged the 400-meter targets, a crowd of candidates and instructors had gathered to watch, drawn by word that something significant was happening at Alpha Team's position. Her final shot, taken in a crosswind that would have challenged experienced snipers, struck the center of the target with such precision that Captain Mitchell himself walked downrange to examine the bullet hole. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of Chief Rodriguez announcing that Sarah had achieved a perfect score of 10 out of 10 hits. The captain's expression revealed nothing as he returned from examining the targets, but his next words would change everything. He announced that based on her demonstrated marksmanship superiority and tactical recommendations, Sarah would assume leadership of Alpha Team for the assault phase. Johnson was reassigned to a support role, a decision that effectively ended his chances of graduating from the program but potentially saved lives during the dangerous live-fire exercise that lay ahead. As Sarah prepared to lead her team into the final phase of training, she understood that this moment represented more than just a change in tactical leadership. Her rifle had indeed told the truth about her capabilities, speaking louder than any doubts or prejudices that had surrounded her journey through the program. Leading Alpha Team into the final assault phase of the exercise, Sarah felt the weight of 6 months of training crystallizing into a single moment of truth. The mock compound before them represented everything she had worked toward, every doubt she had overcome, and every barrier she had broken through. The eyes of her teammates, the instructors, and Captain Mitchell were all focused on her ability to translate individual excellence into team leadership under the most challenging circumstances. The assault plan Sarah developed was methodical and precise, drawing on every tactical lesson learned throughout the program, while accounting for the specific strengths and limitations of her team members. She positioned Thompson, whose size and strength made him ideal for breaching operations, at the primary entry point. Rodriguez would provide covering fire from an elevated position, while Martinez handled communications and coordinated with supporting elements. Sarah herself would take the most dangerous position, leading the initial entry into the compound where hostages were reportedly being held. This decision surprised many observers, as team leaders typically directed operations from positions that allowed them to maintain command and control rather than exposing themselves to maximum risk. However, Sarah understood that her marksmanship, skills, and quick decision-making ability made her the most qualified candidate to handle the split-second judgments required. During room-clearing operations, the compound itself was a masterpiece of training facility design, constructed to replicate the complexity and danger of real-world targets that SEAL teams might encounter during actual operations. Multiple buildings were connected by narrow corridors and stairways, with numerous rooms that could contain either hostages to be rescued or enemies to be neutralized. Live ammunition would be used throughout the exercise, with role players wearing protective gear and using marking systems to simulate casualties. As Alpha Team moved into position for the assault, Sarah conducted final equipment checks and reviewed contingency plans with each team member. The coordination required was extraordinary, as success depended not just on individual performance, but on the ability of 6 people to function as a single, coordinated weapon system. Any breakdown in communication or hesitation in execution could result in mission failure or simulated casualties that would end military careers. The signal to begin came at exactly 1400 hours, transmitted through encrypted radio channels that connected Alpha Team with the overall exercise command structure. Sarah led her team through the breach point that Thompson had created, moving with the fluid precision of a dancer, but carrying the focused lethality of a warrior. Her rifle moved in synchronized arcs, covering potential threat areas while her teammates flowed through the space behind her in predetermined patterns. The first room contained 2 role players representing enemy combatants, both armed and positioned behind cover that provided them significant tactical advantages. Sarah's training took over as she processed multiple threat indicators simultaneously, identifying legitimate targets while ensuring clear fields of fire for her teammates. Her shots were instantaneous and precise, neutralizing both threats before they could engage her team or the simulated hostages located in the same room. The exercise controllers monitoring the action through multiple camera angles and real-time sensor data confirmed clean kills on both targets, with no simulated friendly casualties or collateral damage. The precision required for such shots taken in the confined space of an active combat scenario impressed even veteran instructors who had seen thousands of similar exercises over their careers. Moving deeper into the compound, Alpha Team encountered increasingly complex scenarios designed to test their ability to make split-second decisions under maximum stress. In one room, they found a mix of armed combatants and unarmed civilians, requiring them to distinguish between threats and innocents while maintaining aggressive forward momentum. Sarah's leadership during these moments was instinctive and decisive, issuing clear commands that allowed her team to engage legitimate targets while protecting non-combatants. The most challenging scenario awaited them in the compound's central building, where intelligence indicated that multiple high-value hostages were being held under heavy guard. The tactical problem was complex, requiring Alpha Team to coordinate their assault with supporting elements while navigating a multi-level structure filled with potential ambush points and booby traps. Sarah's approach to this final challenge demonstrated the tactical maturity she had developed throughout the program. Rather than rushing forward with aggressive momentum that had served them well in earlier rooms, she ordered a deliberate reconnaissance of the building's layout, using fiber optic cameras and other surveillance equipment. The intelligence gathered revealed enemy positions and defensive preparations that would have made a direct assault extremely costly. Her solution was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. Alpha Team would create a diversion at the main entrance while Sarah and Thompson infiltrated through a secondary access point that surveillance had revealed to be lightly defended. The timing required split-second coordination, as the diversionary element would only maintain enemy attention for a limited period before the tactical situation shifted. The execution was flawless. As Martinez and Rodriguez created the planned diversion at the front of the building, Sarah and Thompson moved through their infiltration route with ghost-like silence. Sarah's small stature became a significant advantage in the confined spaces, allowing her to move through areas that would have been impossible for larger team members to navigate effectively. When they reached the hostage location, Sarah found herself facing the exercise's ultimate challenge, a scenario where armed enemies were positioned among the hostages, using them as human shields while maintaining the ability to cause casualties if the rescue attempt failed. The shot angles required to neutralize the threats without risking hostage casualties were extraordinarily difficult, demanding precision that pushed the limits of human marksmanship ability. Sarah's rifle seemed to become an extension of her consciousness as she processed the tactical geometry of the situation. Wind speed, distance, target movement, and the positions of multiple hostages all had to be calculated instantly, while maintaining the element of surprise that gave them their only advantage. Her first shot eliminated the primary threat with surgical precision, creating an opening that allowed Thompson to engage secondary targets while she maintained overwatch. The entire hostage rescue sequence lasted less than 90 seconds, but the complexity of the tactical problem solved during that time represented the culmination of everything Sarah had learned throughout the program. When the exercise controllers called an end to the scenario and began their after-action review, the silence from the observing instructors spoke volumes about the quality of the performance they had just witnessed. Captain Mitchell's evaluation of the exercise was delivered in his characteristic monotone, but the content revealed a fundamental shift in his assessment of Sarah's capabilities. He acknowledged that Alpha Team's performance under her leadership had been exceptional, and that her tactical decisions throughout the scenario had demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking and operational expertise that the SEAL community required from its members. The captain's final comment, delivered while examining the target analysis data from Sarah's precision shots, was perhaps the most significant moment of her entire training experience. He stated that her marksmanship performance during the final exercise represented some of the finest shooting he had observed in 30 years of military service, and that her ability to maintain such precision while leading a complex tactical operation indicated potential for exceptional leadership within the special operations community. As Alpha Team prepared to return to base for final processing and graduation preparations, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Her rifle, cleaned and secured for the last time as a Buddhist candidate, had indeed told the truth about her capabilities when words and prejudices had failed to capture her potential. The weeks following the successful final exercise brought an unexpected twist that would test Sarah's resolve in ways she had never imagined. Despite her exceptional performance and Captain Mitchell's acknowledgement of her capabilities, whispers began circulating through the command structure about potential administrative complications regarding her graduation from the program. The issue wasn't her performance, which had been exemplary by any objective measure. Instead, it centered on broader policy questions about the integration of women into special operations units that extended far beyond the training command's authority to resolve. Pentagon officials had become involved in discussions about Sarah's case, viewing her potential graduation as a precedent that could have far-reaching implications for military policy. Sarah found herself in an administrative limbo that was more frustrating than any physical challenge she had faced during training. While her male classmates began receiving their assignments to operational SEAL teams, she was told to remain at the training facility pending resolution of policy questions that seemed to have no clear timeline for resolution. The uncertainty was maddening for someone who had proven herself through action rather than politics. Chief Rodriguez, who had watched Sarah's development throughout the program, became an unexpected advocate during this difficult period. He had served in combat alongside many SEAL team members over his career, and he understood better than most what qualities were truly essential for success in special operations. In his professional opinion, Sarah possessed those qualities in abundance, regardless of her gender. The chief's support came in practical forms that helped Sarah maintain her skills and readiness, while the administrative process played out. He arranged for her to continue training with advanced weapon systems and tactics, ensuring that the forced delay wouldn't degrade the capabilities she had worked so hard to develop. These informal training sessions also served to demonstrate continued institutional confidence in her abilities. During this period, Sarah also received an unexpected visitor who would change her perspective on the challenges she faced. Master Chief Patricia Williams, one of the first women to serve in Navy Special Operations support roles, traveled from Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters to meet with Sarah personally. Their conversation took place away from official channels, in a small cafe near the base where they could speak freely. Master Chief Williams shared her own experiences breaking barriers in the military, including the personal costs and professional challenges that came with being a pioneer in traditionally male domains. She helped Sarah understand that her situation was about more than just her individual career, that she had become a symbol in a larger debate about women's roles in combat that extended far beyond the military, into American society as a whole. The Master Chief's advice was both practical and philosophical. She encouraged Sarah to remain patient with the administrative process, while continuing to demonstrate her capabilities at every opportunity. More importantly, she helped Sarah understand that the scrutiny she faced, while unfair, was actually a testament to the significance of what she had accomplished and the potential impact of her success. As weeks turned into months, Sarah began to worry that the delay was actually a strategy designed to pressure her into voluntarily withdrawing from the program. The psychological pressure of uncertainty, combined with the isolation of being separated from her graduating classmates, created a different kind of stress than anything she had experienced during the physical challenges of training. Her rifle became a source of comfort and connection to her identity as a warrior during this difficult period. Daily maintenance and practice sessions provided structure and purpose when the official training schedule offered neither. The familiar weight of the weapon and the precision required for accurate shooting grounded her in the skills and confidence she had developed throughout the program. The turning point came when Senator Maria Gonzalez, chairwoman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, announced that she would be conducting a review of women's integration into special operations forces. The senator's interest in Sarah's case transformed it from an internal military matter into a national political issue that could no longer be resolved. Through quiet administrative channels, Captain Mitchell found himself in the uncomfortable position of defending decisions about Sarah's status to congressional staff members who had little understanding of military training or operational requirements. His testimony about Sarah's performance during Buddhist was factual and professional, but it also revealed his evolution from skepticism to genuine respect for her capabilities. The captain's key testimony centered on the objective performance data from Sarah's training record. Her physical fitness scores, academic achievements, leadership evaluations, and marksmanship records all placed her in the top tier of candidates who had successfully completed the program. When pressed by committee staff about whether he would trust Sarah in combat, his response was unequivocal. She had demonstrated every quality he looked for in a SEAL team member. The congressional attention also brought media scrutiny that Sarah had never wanted or expected. Reporters from major news networks began investigating her background, interviewing former commanders and fellow service members about her character and abilities. The coverage was generally positive, but it also intensified the pressure she felt as a symbol, rather than simply a sailor trying to serve her country. Through all the external noise and political maneuvering, Sarah maintained her focus on the core mission that had brought her to Bud S in the first place, serving as an elite warrior protecting American interests around the world. She understood that the administrative delays and political debates were obstacles to overcome, rather than reasons to abandon her goals. The resolution came suddenly and without fanfare, in the form of a brief memorandum from the Secretary of the Navy, directing that all qualified Bud S graduates be processed for assignment to operational units regardless of gender. The memo was deliberately understated, designed to minimize political controversy while establishing clear policy guidance for future cases. Sarah learned about the decision from Chief Rodriguez, who found her on the rifle range where she had been maintaining her skills throughout the long wait. His simple statement that she had been cleared for graduation and assignment carried more emotional weight than any elaborate ceremony could have provided. After months of uncertainty, she was finally going to become a Navy SEAL. The actual graduation ceremony was a subdued affair, attended primarily by training staff and a few family members. Sarah's father made the trip from Texas, his pride evident despite his attempt to maintain the stoic demeanor that had characterized their relationship throughout her childhood. Seeing the SEAL trident pinned to her uniform was a moment of vindication for both of them, proof that the lessons he had taught her about perseverance and excellence had prepared her for this achievement. Captain Mitchell's final evaluation of Sarah's performance was included in her official record, where it would follow her throughout her career. His assessment was thorough and honest, acknowledging both her exceptional capabilities and the unique circumstances of her path through the program. Most importantly, it recommended her for assignment to an operational SEAL team without qualification or reservation. As Sarah prepared to leave the training facility for her new assignment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The rifle that had served as her constant companion throughout training represented more than just a weapon. It had become a symbol of her identity as a warrior and her commitment to excellence under any circumstances. Together, they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead in her career as a Navy SEAL. Sarah's assignment to SEAL Team 7 came with both anticipation and uncertainty. Located at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, the team had a reputation for handling some of the most challenging missions in the special operations community. Her arrival marked a historic moment, as she became the first woman to serve as an operational member of a Navy SEAL team. But the significance of that milestone was overshadowed by the practical realities of integrating into an established unit. Team 7's commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander David Hayes, had requested Sarah specifically based on her training record and the recommendations from her Bud S instructors. Hayes was a pragmatic leader who cared more about operational capability than social barriers, and he saw Sarah's unique background and exceptional skills as assets that could enhance his team's effectiveness in certain mission profiles. The team members' initial reactions to Sarah's arrival were mixed, reflecting the broader tensions within the special operations community about women in combat roles. Some welcomed her based on her proven performance during training, while others remained skeptical about how she would perform during actual operations where lives depended on split-second decisions and absolute trust between team members. Sarah understood that her real test would not come from formal evaluations or training exercises, but from earning the trust and respect of her teammates through consistent performance in the field. She approached this challenge with the same methodical determination that had carried her through Bud S, focusing on demonstrating her value to the team through actions rather than words. Her first operational deployment came sooner than expected, when Team 7 was assigned to support counterterrorism operations in the Middle East. The mission involved working with local partner forces to identify and eliminate terrorist leadership in a region where conventional military operations had proven ineffective. Sarah's role would be as the team's designated marksman, a position that utilized her exceptional shooting skills while integrating her into the team's operational structure. The deployment began with several weeks of mission-specific training at a classified facility in the southwestern United States. Sarah and her teammates practiced the specialized tactics and procedures they would need for their assigned missions, including advanced marksmanship, close-quarters combat, and coordination with partner forces who spoke different languages and operated according to different military traditions. During this training phase, Sarah's rifle once again became the instrument through which she proved her worth to skeptical colleagues. The precision shooting requirements for their upcoming missions were extraordinary, involving shots at distances and in conditions that challenged even the most experienced snipers. Sarah's consistent ability to hit targets that others missed gradually won over team members who had initially questioned her presence. The breakthrough moment came during a complex training scenario that replicated the conditions they would face during actual operations. Team 7 was tasked with eliminating a high-value target while operating in an urban environment where civilians and friendly forces were present in close proximity to the objective. The shot angles and precision requirements made it one of the most challenging scenarios any of them had attempted. Sarah's position for the scenario was on a rooftop approximately 600 meters from the target building, where she would provide overwatch and precision fire support for the assault team. The environmental conditions included variable winds, limited visibility, and multiple factors that could affect bullet trajectory and accuracy. Most importantly, the margin for error was essentially zero, as any mistake could result in civilian casualties or compromise the mission. When the moment came to take the shot, Sarah found herself in the familiar state of focused calm that had characterized her best performances throughout training. Her rifle felt like a natural extension of her body as she processed the complex ballistic calculations required for the shot while monitoring her teammates' positions and the overall tactical situation. The target appeared in her scope for only a few seconds, presenting a shooting window that most snipers would have considered inadequate for engagement. However, Sarah's training and natural abilities came together in perfect harmony as she squeezed the trigger with surgical precision. The bullet traveled true to its target, eliminating the threat and allowing her teammates to complete their mission without complications. The after-action review of the training exercise was led by Colonel Sandra Kim, a senior special operations officer who had been observing Team 7's preparation for deployment. Colonel Kim's assessment of Sarah's performance was unqualified in its praise, describing the shot as one of the finest examples of precision marksmanship she had witnessed in 20 years of military service. More importantly, from Sarah's perspective, the successful completion of the challenging shot earned her the complete acceptance of her teammates. The final barriers of skepticism and uncertainty disappeared as they recognized that she could be trusted to perform at the highest level when their lives depended on it. She had proven herself not just as a capable shooter, but as a reliable teammate who would execute her responsibilities flawlessly under pressure. The actual deployment to the Middle East brought Sarah face to face with the realities of combat operations in a way that no training exercise could replicate. The missions were complex and dangerous, requiring split-second decisions and absolute trust between team members. Sarah's performance during these operations validated every assessment of her capabilities that had been made during training. Over the course of 6 months, Team 7 conducted dozens of successful operations with Sarah serving as their precision marksman. Her rifle accounted for numerous enemy casualties, including several high-value targets whose elimination significantly degraded terrorist capabilities in the region. Her teammates came to rely on her not just for her shooting skills, but for her tactical judgment and calm leadership under pressure. The deployment's most significant operation involved the rescue of American hostages who had been captured by a terrorist organization operating in a remote mountainous region. The mission required Team 7 to infiltrate enemy territory, locate the hostages, and conduct a precision rescue operation while minimizing the risk of casualties among the captives. Sarah's role in the operation was critical, as she would provide overwatch from a concealed position while her teammates conducted the actual rescue. Her responsibility was to eliminate any threats that could compromise the mission or endanger the hostages, requiring her to maintain constant vigilance and readiness to engage targets at a moment's notice. The rescue operation unfolded exactly as planned, with Sarah's rifle providing the precision fire support that allowed her teammates to successfully extract all hostages without casualties. Her performance during this mission earned her a Bronze Star Medal with Combat V, recognizing both her tactical excellence and her courage under fire. When Team 7 returned from deployment, Sarah had achieved something that went far beyond personal success. She had proven that integration of women into special operations units was not just possible, but could enhance operational capability when individuals were selected and trained according to the same rigorous standards applied to all SEAL candidates. Her rifle, cleaned and maintained with the same meticulous care she had shown throughout her career, represented more than just a tool of war. It had become a symbol of excellence, precision, and the truth that capability and character mattered more than gender or tradition. Sarah Martinez had not just become a Navy SEAL. She had redefined what it meant to serve in the most elite units of the American military. The story of her journey from a small Texas town to the pinnacles of military special operations would inspire future generations of warriors, proving that with determination, skill, and unwavering commitment to excellence, any barrier could be overcome and any goal could be achieved.